At the time I make this video, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU, is the most successful connected movie franchise in the history of movies, raking in almost $30 billion over 33 movies. So even including the pandemic movies that limited capacity and the failure of Captain Marvel 2, they're still averaging over $900 million per movie. This video is in celebration of Marvel Studios and what they have accomplished along with their parent company, Disney. Welcome back to Comic Power. I'm your host, Comic Killer 72, and welcome to a special report. We're going to rank all 33 films so far from worst to first. If you don't like my list, go to the comment section and post your own. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and here we go. Number 33, Thor: Love and Thunder. This is the only MCU movie that I think is truly terrible, like Catwoman and Fantastic type terrible. They didn't just throw in a couple of jokes, they make the whole movie a joke, and just made the God of Thunder some silly goofball the whole movie. He finds Lady Sif, who has lost her arm in battle, and the first thing he does is start telling jokes about it. They embarrass Russell Crowe as Zeus by making him wear a tutu. Valkyrie literally does an Old Spice commercial. The screaming goats got annoying after the first time. A lot of the CGI is subpar. Jane Foster Thor says, "Eat my hammer." Is that supposed to be a funny catchphrase? Because it's not. This movie is even worse than you remember. Just throw it in the trash. Number 32, The Eternals, which had potential but turned out to be a confusing, garbled mess. They're supposed to be these super beings that have been on Earth for thousands of years in hiding, and their mission is convoluted because in one minute they're saying they're supposed to help humans evolve, but on the other hand they're supposed to stay out of human affairs. So maybe I might give you a pass for not helping in Avengers 1 against Loki and his army, but you didn't help out when Thanos showed up, and his mission didn't affect just human affairs. It was mass extinction at a universal level. You know, we could have used you guys in Wakanda that day. That's not just a plot hole, that's a plot ocean. Despite that, you got 10 new characters that no one ever heard of that you need to develop. Trying to do all that in 2 hours and some change in one movie is a tough task. If anything should have been a Disney Plus series, it should have been The Eternals. Number 31, Thor 2, also known as The Dark World. It's not a bad movie by any means, it's just kind of generic. The villain Malekith is supposed to look like this in the comics, and it made him look like this in the movie. That's awful. The film is boring, the attempted romance falls flat, the only thing worth watching is Loki. Number 30, Ant-Man 3, also known as Quantumania. This wraps up Ant-Man's trilogy with a thud instead of a bang, and what feels like a completely unnecessary movie. You built up Kang to be a Avengers level threat, and he loses to Ant-Man pretty easily? This is a forgettable, plastic, soulless movie. Number 29, Iron Man 2, which is a real mess of a film. The best part of this movie is when Tony testifies in front of the Senate very defiantly, and we get the introduction of Black Widow, which is also great. But then the film suffers from too many competing storylines. His relationship with Pepper, Rhodey getting his armor, his daddy issues, his competitor Justin Hammer, and his own technology is slowly killing him. And Mickey Rourke as Whiplash is probably the worst villain in the history of the MCU. Number 28, Captain Marvel 2, simply known as The Marvels. It now has the distinction of being a stain on the MCU as the lowest performing movie of all time in its history. Quick, tell me, who is the name of the villain in this movie without using Google? You probably can't do it, can you? The major plot hole in this one to me is that Captain Marvel isn't powerful enough to beat the generic villain by herself. But at the end of the movie, she's able to restart a literal sun by herself with no sweat. At the end of the day, this movie just isn't very good. And in a world where most MCU movies are too long, this one actually feels too short. Number 27 is The Incredible Hulk, the only standalone Hulk movie in the MCU. The story is okay, but I find the CGI pretty bad. Even for 2008 standards, it's substandard. And I never liked Ed Norton as Bruce Banner. He's a snarky type of actor, and Bruce Banner is supposed to be somebody who's more humble. Mark Ruffalo is a much better version of this character to me. Until Captain Marvel 2 showed up, it was also the lowest grossing movie in MCU history. Number 26 is Iron Man 3 from 2013. I find it ironic that Marvel's biggest solo star has the weakest trilogy. I didn't hate this film, it's got some great action sequences, but some of the things that are bad in it are really bad. The main villain in it is pretty forgettable, and that whole Mandarin twist is corny to me. And the scene where Tony gives the bad guys his home address and he's not prepared when they show up is nonsensical for the Iron Man character. He also has PTSD, and it appears that he's destroying his armors and is no longer Iron Man. But in the next Avengers films to come, in Captain America Civil War, he's back being Iron Man again like this movie never happened. It's definitely a Shane Black movie the way that Shane Black makes them, but it doesn't work for the MCU. Number 25, Ant-Man 2, also known as Ant-Man and the Wasp, released just after Infinity War. The good about this movie is that they gave the Wasp something to do, and she actually leads the action scenes. However, the reluctant villain in the story is Ghost, who's completely forgettable, and they probably should have given more screen time to the Bill Foster character played by Lawrence Fishburne as Goliath. like some type of tease of his costume or something. The fact that he doesn't show up in Ant-Man 3 makes this even more disappointing. Ant-Man 2 has some cool action scenes, but it's not essential for the MCU, so not much rewatch value. Number 24 is Doctor Strange Part 1, released in 2016. As they always do, Marvel got it right in the casting with Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange. Those British actors are so good, and the movie succeeds because it accurately captures the Ditko, colorful, acid, trippy looking visuals that makes it feel like somebody spiked the punch when you drunk it. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. And Benedict Wong, playing Wong, is also another great British actor in his supporting role. Where the movie fails is forced comedy like name-dropping Beyonce. Hey, I love Bae, but they shouldn't be name-dropping her in this movie. The film is good, it's just not as good as it should be, and the forced humor was really cringy. Number 23 is Black Widow, released in 2021. I did like Black Widow, and it had the huge task of being the first post-pandemic movie released in theaters from Marvel. It includes some really great action scenes that I love. But what made this movie work so well is the connection between Natasha and Yelena. They really sold it to the audience that they care about each other like surrogate sisters. The reason I don't have this ranked higher is because the movie is too late. The events of the film take place in 2016, the film was released in 2021, and the character is dead in 2023. So it's kind of hard to pull for a character that you already know that's dead with a movie that's been shoehorned that should have came out 5 years ago. Some people were disappointed in how they used Taskmaster. It wasn't a big deal to me personally. If they will continue the Black Widow movie series with Florence Pugh as the hero, then I'm here for it. Number 22 is Thor Part 1, released in 2011. It's another one of those just okay movies that you don't have to see. Instead of embracing the Kirby comic bookish Thor, it looked like they were shooting for some epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings, and they failed at capturing that style. And just like in Thor The Dark World, the Force Romantic subplot just does not work. They have no chemistry. The movie's called Thor, but Loki's the most interesting character in it. Number 21 is Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, released in 2017. It pains my heart to put this so low because there's so many things I like about this film. The will they or won't they romantic subplot is working in this movie between Gamora and Star-Lord. The same thing with Mantis and Drax. The tortured scars on Nebula and Rocket Raccoon really make you love these characters even more. But the story fails in introducing the main plot, which is the villain of Ego being Peter's father, and it's just not a very interesting character. So everything is working in this film except for Ego, and that's a problem. Number 20 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, released in 2021. I didn't like this film as much as I thought I was going to like it, considering I was such a big fan of the comic back in the day when I was a kid. And don't get me wrong, the fight scenes like on the bus, I loved them. The betrayal of Wen Wu, aka the real Mandarin, I also liked that. I didn't like the idea of the Ten Rings being so cosmic in nature, at least known this early. The same thing with the dragons. I think it took too much away from the main character in the third act and kind of made it like a monster movie, like I was watching Godzilla or something. I think they should have kept him more street level as the master of Kung Fu in Part 1 and then expand on the epic fantasy stuff in Part 2 and Part 3. Number 19, Captain Marvel, released in 2019. I was happy when this movie made $1 billion at the box office so it could silence the trolls who were trying to tank this film because they were not happy with the feminist stance of its lead star, Brie Larson. But the reality is, it's a pretty solid origin film. We get introduced to the Skrulls for the first time in the MCU, and their ongoing war with the Kree is explained. This movie has some of the best CGI I've seen in the MCU. It's not a perfect film. It's pretty corny how Nick Fury lost his eye, for example. But it's pretty fun and way better than the trolls give it credit for. Number 18, Ant-Man Part 1, released in 2015. By far the most silly and ridiculous franchise in the Marvel Universe, and it doesn't shy away from it. It doubles down on its ridiculousness. And Paul Rudd is perfectly cast for this role. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym as well. Evangeline Lilly doesn't get much to do in this movie, but the end credit with her suit is a big payoff. Using Michael Pena to explain the exposition in a hilarious way works so well. The movie is just a very fun action comedy heist. Its only failure is having a generic, forgettable villain with powers that are similar to the hero, something Marvel has done way too much. Number 17 is Spider-Man Homecoming, released in 2017. This is Peter Parker's first solo movie in the MCU, and it's good but not great. In saying that, Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man of all the people who've played him so far. The most interesting thing about this movie, obviously, is Michael Keaton giving a masterclass in acting. He's just wow in this film. The bad about this movie is that they make him way too dependent on Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. I get it, Tony is supposed to be his mentor, he's still pretty new at being a superhero. He just worships Iron Man just a little bit too much, and it takes away from the film. Number 16, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, released in 2023. Marvel did the impossible by taking some forgotten throwaway D-list characters and turning them into household names. These movies are like Rush Hour to me. It doesn't matter what the plot is or who the villain is. We just love the chemistry and the hijinks of the lead actors. I mean, did you really care about the High Evolutionary? And although teased for nearly 10 years, Adam Warlock did nothing to advance the plot. But it didn't matter, you liked it anyway, didn't you? We got the origin of Rocket Raccoon, and Cosmo is a good dog. Works for me. Number 15, Avengers Age of Ultron, released in 2015. There's a lot of great things that happen in this movie, but it's been rated consistently as the worst Avengers movie so far. I was really excited to see the first full appearance of Wanda and Pietro, and Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch has been everything and more in what I imagined in this character. She's excellent. How they introduced a Vision and Paul Bettany playing him has also been great. And what I didn't like is, if you're going to introduce Quicksilver, why are you going to kill him so fast and so easy? I felt like scenes like the Hulkbuster armor were designed to sell toys instead of add something to the actual film's plot. And I think they made the villain a little too goofy and too jokey. He's an AI that's supposed to have some personality, but they made him a little too silly in my opinion. In saying that, the movie's still good when it should have been great. Number 14, Spider-Man Far From Home, released in 2019. This is a very fun movie to watch as we see Peter readjust to his life post-blip on a school road trip to Europe where things go bonkers. We're introduced to Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, which really works, and the chemistry between Tom Holland and Zendaya is electric. There's a natural attraction there that feels like they're dating in real life. This movie will always be fun to watch, but like Homecoming, it's still too dominated by the shadow of Iron Man. Giving a superpowered teenager a high-tech suit is one thing, but giving him a set of glasses that can call in a drone strike at will is just jumping the shark to me, even for a comic book movie. I'm probably overthinking this though. Number 13, Captain America, The First Avenger, released in 2011. I thought the casting of Chris Evans as Steve Rogers from the very beginning was a good choice. And I'll admit, the first time I saw this movie, I found it to be slow moving and kind of boring. But when I go back and watch it, I appreciate how they incorporated the Howling Commandos. The scene where he's turned into a super soldier with Peggy Carter really works. And Captain America made his debut in comics in 1941, punching Hitler. So recreating that in a campy way was a good touch. I would still say at this point that Captain America has the best trilogy of all Marvel's heroes. It all begins here, and it's better than you remember. Number 12, Wakanda Forever, released in 2022. This movie had the impossible task of how to move on after the death of Chadwick Boseman, and choosing not to replace T'Challa with another actor was a tough decision, but I think the right one. No matter what you did, there was no way you were going to make everyone happy. The movie successfully takes on a theme of processing grief and how to move on. Letitia Wright showed that her shoulders were strong enough to be a lead character. I did like Dominique Thorne as Ironheart. I thought she was charming and effective. I was very impressed with this version of Namor the Submariner. He'll definitely be back. I can't wait for more adventures in Wakanda and see what they do for Black Panther 3. Number 10, Thor Ragnarok, released in 2017. After the first two Thor movies were not so well received, Marvel decided to go ahead and change course and borrow influence from the Guardians of the Galaxy and turn it into a space action comedy, overseen by an indie director from New Zealand. On paper, that sounds crazy, but it actually worked. Kate Blanchett as Hela is a win. Tessa Thompson was excellent as Valkyrie. Using Fire Lord Surtur as part of the plot was excellent. Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster, loved it. They even found a way to incorporate the Planet Hulk storyline. Yes, they made Thor funnier, but they also made him smarter and not fall for Loki's tricks so easily that you can see coming from a mile away. Let's just pretend that Love and Thunder never happened and enjoy this film, okay? Number 9, Spider-Man No Way Home, released in 2021. Is this just a gimmicky fan service movie, or is this a great Spider-Man movie on its own merit? Hey, why can't it be both? Let's admit it though, seeing all three of the men who played Spider-Man live action in movies together in one film is pretty cool. And giving them redemption arcs so they can fix the things they failed at is also nice. Like the Andrew Garfield version saving MJ when he couldn't save Gwen in his universe. It also made us feel empathy for the villains in this movie. The multiverse opens up endless possibilities of what they could do in the future. I'll be happy as long as they give us more Tom Holland and Zendaya, because this is really working. Number 8, Iron Man Part 1, released in 2008, and the MCU starts here. It really showed that Marvel knew what they were doing in casting by bringing in Robert Downey Jr. as the lead as Tony Stark and not dealing with Tom Cruise's massive ego or Nick Cage's goofiness. They did an incredible job of following the origin from the comics and giving us the Mark I armor, and Joaquin Phoenix was the first actor to win the Best Actor Oscar for a comic book movie, but it should have been Robert Downey Jr. He was just incredible as Iron Man at such epic proportions. I didn't think Terrence Howard was right for Rhodey, so when they replaced him, I was happy with that. And this film started that trend of having a villain that has a similar power to the hero, which Marvel used way too much, but I'm nitpicking. I absolutely love this film, and I go back and watch this at least once a year. Those terrorists never had a chance. Number 7, Captain America Civil War, released back in 2016. Considering all the major players are in it except for Hulk and Thor, you can call this Avengers 2.5, but I call it an orgy of comic book source goodies, being adapted perfectly to film that I can nerd out to. We get the first live action appearance of Black Panther, Crown Prince T'Challa, and the first appearance of Spider-Man in live action in the MCU, played by Tom Holland. And the airport fight scene is one of the best things ever in life. The plot involving Baron Zemo pulling strings makes no real sense, but we really don't care because we're having so much fun. And like Cap said, I can do this all day. Sure can. Number 6, Avengers Endgame, released in 2019. You would think this movie wouldn't work and it would implode because there's a lot of things that people don't like about it. Like in his grief, making Thor a fat slacker dude. Or taking the action hero out of the Hulk and turning him into Professor Hulk, whose key mission is to explain what's going on to the audience. And of course, the time travel plot, because all time travel movies have plot holes. But it overcomes that because we're so vested in finding out what happens to the Avengers and how to recover after the snap. And we get one of the best third act climax action scenes in the history of cinema. And Tony Stark, the character that the MCU based its foundation on, going out and sacrificing himself like a G. It's just so much fun. You gotta love this movie. Number 5, Black Panther, released in 2018. There's just so much going on for this movie in terms of Afrofuturism, the subtext of black nationalism, and what responsibility you have to help others if you're well off and they're not. It's a very deep movie. If you're just looking at the surface of it, it's just a very entertaining film. It's the highest grossing movie of all time with a majority black cast. It was the first comic book movie of any kind that was nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. Until Thanos made his first full appearance in Infinity War, I believe that Killmonger was the best villain in MCU history. Unfortunately, we lost Chadwick Boseman in real life, and it's going to be with a heavy heart watching these movies going forward in the future. But the mantle of the Black Panther will continue. You did us proud, Chad. Number 4, Avengers Part 1, released in 2012. This is the epic fulfillment of Marvel taking its time, building its independent solo characters by themselves, and building up to this big foundation of the Avengers. And at the time it was released, it was the only comic book film not named Batman to make $1 billion at the box office. At 12 years old, this movie holds up incredibly well. The Avengers were formed in the pages of Marvel Comics in 1963, with Loki being the key villain. So it was only fitting in the live action movie that he would be the villain in this as well. When the Avengers theme plays and they all form in that circle for the third act of the film, when they're about to go into battle, it just warms your heart with excitement. I love this film. It's a remarkable achievement. Number 3, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, released in 2014. Cap probably has the best overall trilogy of all of the Avengers solo members, and The Winter Soldier is the crown jewel. It's basically an action, espionage, spy thriller, disguised as a comic book movie. The action is more grounded like a Nolan Batman film, so anyone that likes action movies that doesn't even like comic book films could like this movie. The chemistry between Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan as friends, foes, and then friends again really works. What can you say about ScarJo? Marvel messed up by not giving her a solo film a long time ago. Number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 1, released in 2014. This was Marvel's 10th release, and I'll be honest, this is the one I thought they were going to fail at, because no one had heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they had all these quirky characters like a gun-loving raccoon and a tree man. It can only repeat his name. This is supposed to crash and burn, but it didn't. It was a mega success, and it even outperformed The Amazing Spider-Man in the summer of 2014. This was Marvel ascending to the throne as king and forced Sony to stop making Spider-Man movies on their own and bring him into the MCU and just partner with him. Guardians works because the lead character of Peter Quill is basically a mix of Indiana Jones meets Han Solo, but with the ridiculousness of, say, Galaxy Quest thrown in. This is one of those films that I always come back to and love it even more, because I am Groot. And last but not least, number 1 is Avengers Infinity War, released in 2018. What can you say? This is a sci-fi action thriller of the epitome of these type of. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy where the bad guy actually wins. So you could compare this to The Empire Strikes Back from Star Wars. It's the first comic book film I had ever seen where grown men were actually crying in the theater when their favorite characters died. In my opinion, Marvel was able to successfully adapt Thanos and make him on the level of, say, Darth Vader in terms of pop culture impact. Infinity War was a great adaptation of Jim Starlin's Thanos Quest, a 2-issue graphic novel series, which showed the journey and how Thanos was able to get the 6 Infinity Stones, and the Infinity Gauntlet, a 6-issue miniseries which broke down the battle between him and Earth's heroes. The Infinity War movie is such an epic tragedy that it doesn't even need music to boost the pacing of this 3-hour movie. It uses 2 songs in the whole movie, the Rubber Band Man when the Guardians of the Galaxy show up, and the theme of Black Panther when they go to Wakanda. I've never seen anything like that before that worked in a movie, and it absolutely does, because it shows the bleakness of what's going on here. It's got some of the most quotable lines in MCU history as well. I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers. You should have went for the head. Get this man a shield. I absolutely love this film and will hold up forever as an epic achievement in cinema. And in my opinion, the best of 33 MCU movies so far. Alright folks, what you're looking at right now is a recap of all 33 films from worst to first, according to Comic Power. If you don't like my list, be sure to go into the comment section and post your own list. This list is going to be good until July 26, 2024. That's when the MCU's 34th movie is going to be released, which will be Deadpool 3, which promises to cross over Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. It's the only MCU movie slated for 2024 while they get their house in order. You should be seeing an end screen right now about Thanos. I mentioned how I think he has eclipsed Darth Vader. If you click on the end screen, I have a video where I go in depth about why I feel that way. I intentionally made this video 20 minutes and 24 seconds to match the year. Until next time, this is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying Happy New Year and bye bye.